There is another aspect also that you shouldn't forget is we also have a lot of migration coming actually from Africa. We are talking there more about structural migration, but they're also a big challenge, and we need also to work with the African countries in order actually to organize, this type of migration. So by the end of the day, the migration crisis in a way had a very positive effect on the European project. First, it forced the member states to work toward a stronger Schengen space. That's the space within which actually there are common rules in terms of welcoming migrants and asylum seekers. And we also have managed actually to get, a stronger management of our external borders. And I should add also, a third outcome. In a way, what is going on in Europe also has helped countries to realize that migration is not just, a European issue, it's a world issue. And that's an issue that countries like Australia, New Zealand, the US, all the countries actually have been facing and will be facing for the future. So what is next? I mean, once, we look at these different crises and the way they have shaped the European project, I would like actually to speak about two subjects. First, the next step is actually, what will happen under the next presidency of the European Council, i.e. Slovakia is taking over the Netherlands. You had the privilege the other day to listen to my colleague, Rod Zakman, and I think he spoke at length about the priorities of the Dutch presidency, and I will just give you, a couple of hints about what Slovakia would like to push. When you have the presidency, actually, of the European Union, you do have, of course, your own priorities, but in a way you are very much constrained actually by a document which is called Strategic Program for the European Union in the area of change that was adopted by the head of state and government in June 2014. So you don't have really much space, for each country to push its own national interest. And that's also, in a way, the outcome of what is a real European project. I mean, national interests, are in a way framed also by a common agreement on the objectives for the European project. So when you look at what Slovakia actually would like to promote, there are 5 objectives, and you'll see the objectives are really dealing very much with the core of the European project. The first one is about employment, growth, and competitiveness. It's a way to better address, the economic situation in Europe. The second objective is new prospects for citizens. As you know, in all projects, a political project is working when you really have the citizen actually buying that project, and that's probably one of the weaknesses for the time being in Europe is that the question of accountability, the fact that citizens, do find that actually the European institutions or the project is probably too far away from their daily challenges, and that we need to work on that. We need to explain. We need to be sure that the different policies actually do represent, something that the citizens are expecting. So therefore, we will probably, Slovakia will probably push projects like mutual recognition of qualifications within the EU, or a package also on the mobility of workers, actually being able at the European level to provide, training for people who are out of job. The third objective is dealing with energy. Now, of course, when we talk about a common energy policy, it means it will be pro-climate, of course, policy. And because it's Slovakia and because it's very much dependent also on the provision of natural gas from Russia, it is for them also, a subject which is of great interest. And they would like to deal with what they call energy security. So how can you actually guarantee that you will get enough resources either through natural gas from Russia or from other places in order to secure your energy needs. The fourth objective will be about freedom, security, and justice. One of the main subjects, of course, will be the management of the migration crisis. They also related in a way to that, but not only the fight against terrorism, with a particular emphasis on the fight against terrorist financing and the issue of foreign fighters. And the fifth priority of the Slovak presidency will be about the role of the European Union as a worldwide leading actor. And there are two priorities there. One is really to strengthen what we call the neighborhood policy, i.e. what kind of partnership can we offer to countries which are at the external border of the EU and not yet actually members of the EU, and therefore also look at the way we manage the enlargement process. And the second issue the Slovak presidency would like to discuss is the fight against illegal migration and the cooperation with NATO, because NATO is also involved in the fight against illegal migration. So that's about it. I'm not going to deal in length with the last example I wanted to discuss with you, which is European vision for the world, i.e. the foreign affairs and security policy of the EU. As you know, the European project was based actually on world peace, because it really started right after the aftermath of World War II. And when you look at the different stages actually of the European project, you can tell that it's very much related to the state of the world at that time. World War II, European project. The fall of the eastern country and the fall of the wall. Europe was also there to welcome, the new independent countries. The Balkan crisis, there also Europe was there to welcome some additional states. So in a way, Europe, is part of the world and is not immune to the world. So we are not talking about Fortress Europe. Usually that's a term that we use for economic reasons, but it's also a project which is still, attracting countries and which is still welcoming new countries within the project. The only thing I would like actually to sum up in terms of the foreign affairs and security policy is just about three solid values that in a way shape, the common foreign affairs and security policy. The first one is solidarity, because when you look at the way we reacted after the terrible, terrorist attacks, for example, in Paris in January last year, in November, and then again in Brussels, it's all about solidarity, actually being there and being able, to take on board the fight against terrorism. Solidarity, it's also all about what we do in terms of the refugee crisis. The second core value is about responsibility. Europe is a responsible entity. It's a responsible entity when we talk about climate change. It's a responsible entity when we talk about the UN, about peacekeeping operations, when we look at what is going on in Africa. But it's also a project, Europe, that is capable of being firm and defending the rule of law. You look at Ukraine, and I know that my Polish colleague, has dwelled quite substantially on the subject. Or you look at Iran, the way actually we have dealt, with the nuclear issue in Iran. So Europe, has strong values, and Europe, of course, will remain, a world leader in terms of peace and security. So I think I've probably talked for much too long. A few words for conclusion. For France, a strong Europe is definitely a guarantee to our sovereignty, to peace, and to growth. The core values of Europe, as shaped by the founding fathers, remain valid in today's world. Europe is and will remain a strong voice in the world and continue to bring peace and prosperity to its citizens. And I think there is no alternative anyway, and no better choice. And I, both as a French citizen and as the ambassador of France to New Zealand, remain a true believer and support to the European project. It's a project which is still work in progress, as any ambitious construction project. Thank you very much for your attention.